When everything outside the classroom feels overwhelming, focusing on the small humans in front of you can steady everything. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're continuing in our March theme of simplicity and energy and remembering that your judgment matters more than ever and that human connection is still the work. So today we're talking about focusing on those little people in front of us and doing the big work that we know only we can do. Hope you stick around.
Welcome to One Tired Teacher. And even though she may need a nap, this teacher is ready to wake up and speak her truth about the trials and treasures of teaching. Here she is, wide awake. Wait, she's not asleep right now, is she? She is awake, right? Okay. From Trina Devery Teaching and Learning, your host, Trina Devery.
Hey, so small humans, big work. What does that mean? It often means that sometimes I know we've got, a lot of noise around us. It's, constant things are coming up in education that we often feel like we don't have a lot of control over. Like what they tell us we're supposed to use, what materials we're supposed to use, what assessments we're supposed to do, what programs we're supposed to put our kids on. All those kinds of things, which feels like a lot of noise. And sometimes, especially when things feel hard and heavy around you, really zooming in and focusing in on the kids, the children in front of you, loving them, noticing them, and letting connection be the anchor when the world outside feels heavy. I know an example of a time when I was really struggling in the classroom. I was going through a divorce. This was in 2014. And I was in a classroom with my second graders. And it was really hard to focus on the little people in front of me because I was in such emotional pain. And I had my own kids, and it was I was really worried about them and what we were all going to do and how we were all going to survive. And it was a lot. And I remember one day I was standing in the middle of the classroom and I must have probably looked really lost. But I was thinking and I was standing, kids were doing, they were doing their thing. I was just standing there and I had this sweet little boy who came up and he patted me on the back. And I remember thinking, what is he doing? And I looked at him and he's like, it's okay. And he just patted me. It was like he knew I needed to be comforted. It was the sweetest moment. And you know what's really ironic about that is that this sweet little boy, he really struggled in the area of school, and reading was really hard for him. But he was the happiest little boy, and his emotional intelligence was so beyond his 7-year-old self. And he saw another human in pain, and he recognized that, and he just comforted me. Now, I know that some people are thinking the kids aren't supposed to be comforting the teacher, or the teacher is supposed to be comforting them. And I do think that we as the adults have to hold ourselves together and take care of our kids. But I also think sometimes it's a real gift when we allow the kids to participate and when we allow them to feel protective and loving and practice some of those big feelings. It was a really beautiful moment in the classroom, and it was definitely one that I needed. And it reminded me of what was important, and that was what was in front of me. And so I worked really hard to come in and pay close attention to their needs and what they needed, even when my own were suffering so greatly. So that's what we need to remember when the things get loud and when the things get heavy and when the expectations on us feel impossible. We need to remember the most important part. What do the kids need? They need love. They need understanding. They need patience. And it's important for those kinds of moments to come up. And however they do, I know in this case, it was a personal situation, but in lots of situations, one of the things that I liked to do daily was have a read aloud, whether it was the read aloud that we were working on, during our reading block or for a close read, and we were going back into the story and looking at various aspects of it, or it was the first time they heard the story. I like to choose really meaningful books because they led to such powerful conversations. They led to conversations about love and understanding and patience and empathy and kindness and perseverance and grit. And they were really meaningful. This is often when I put the textbook aside because they didn't have those kind of stories in them. And I used I'm going to say expertise because I think I'm really good at picking out books. I used what I know about children's literature and what I know about children. And I found stories that meant something to kids and meant something to me, and also evoked like strong emotion. And we talked about that too, like the kind of writing that actually makes you feel something inside or makes you, connect to moments in your own life or things that are going on in the world. And those kinds of stories are really powerful. Another thing that I feel was an important element of like getting kids to really respect and care about one another and really focusing on that classroom connection was teaching, things like digital citizenship. I created a unit on digital citizenship and cyber safety and internet, being online, because in 2011, this feels so long ago, I had one-to-one iPads in my classroom, and we were working in an LMS, Schoology, and we were responding to each other, and we were posting thoughts and ideas and responding to questions, and they were doing, those kids could have gone off like online the next day if it had been during, COVID. They were so beyond what our kids were doing in my district at that time. And I was like, I just kept thinking back at those classes I had and how much they knew, and also how hard I worked to create that culture in the classroom, but also online, because personally, I think this is one of the worst times in history of how people are acting online and how much easier it is to say really cruel, hurtful, hateful things from behind a keyboard. And that's why I think it's so important to teach kids to think about people, the humans that are on the other side of it. And in the lessons that I created for the digital citizenship unit, students learn to be safe, how to keep themselves safe. They learn to be kind and responsible online, because there is a responsibility online that I think we all need, but that kids definitely need to understand, because I don't think we have done this to the ability that we need to, especially as a result. You can see what has happened as a result. So I think it's crucial. So we talk about tough topics. We talk about privacy and what privacy means online and also personally. And that's the other thing I like when doing a unit on digital citizenship, is it isn't just digital. It's citizenship. It's the way that we treat each other in person and online. And I think that's really important. And the privacy part is an important lesson for kids to understand in order to be safe in the world and also safe online. And sometimes we take that for granted and we don't think about, what kind of breadcrumbs we are leaving. And also cyberbullying. That's another thing that comes up. This lesson comes later in more of the third grade part of it, because I did lessons for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, and then I have like a bundle. I bundled it for teachers that are teaching like technology, or if you're a media specialist or a STEM teacher, and just to make it a little bit easier and to save a bit of money. But I also think, even as a longtime second grade teacher, I kind of I like the lessons from first grade and I like the lessons from third grade, and I know my second graders can actually handle that. So I might want to do more than one grade level. It's because they're really short. You can do it in about a week. Some units have more lessons than others. As third grade, as you move up, it gets a little bit more, in not intense, but a little bit more content is covered. So cyberbullying is one of the things that we talk about. And we don't necessarily call it cyberbullying in second grade. It's more about being kind to others and being respectful to other people, and what it feels like when you almost feel ganged up on, what it feels like in person and what it feels like online. And then screen balance is a huge one. And because there's so much technology, and even in schools with these programs and these things where we're constantly putting them on the Chromebooks or the computers, and like we're making that screen balance a lot worse, which is another reason why I created my STEM story stations, because I wanted kids off the screen. I'm like, get them off the screen, get them thinking, get them creating, focusing on community, focusing on collaboration, and not so much screen. So I do like to talk to kids about the balance of screen time, because I think it's important. It's important for me. Like I always look at those reports that tell you how much time you were actually efficient, or, were you focusing on health and wellness? Were you online? Were you on, social media? I think that's so interesting. And I'm like, the social media is a little too high for me. So, I think that's really an interesting little graph. I don't know if every phone does that. I know my Apple phone does that. And so I just think, I'm like, oh boy. Anyway, so these things are so important and so meaningful. So if you are interested in that unit, like I said, in kindergarten, we're talking about media balance. We're talking about privacy basics. We're talking about there's a digital superhero pledge. That's like the meat of kindergarten. First grade, we're talking about online safety, kind communication, and respecting others' devices, which is also important. In second grade, we are coming into cyberbullying awareness. Again, I don't think I call it cyberbullying, but I do talk about like being mean and unkind to people, and what that looks like in real life and what that looks like online. We talk about digital footprints. We talk about balance of offline time. And then third grade, we're really focusing on like responsibility rings, like to yourself, to your community, to your world, and being empathetic online and authentic, and like paying attention to authentic information, which I think is a massive skill that every human being can benefit from, especially with AI. We need to make sure that we are gaining or gathering authentic, correct, unbiased information. And that judgment piece is crucial for all of us. So, okay, that is available in my shop on TPT, Trina Devery Teaching and Learning, so you can grab that. I also have a freebie where you can just kind of test it out and decide, is this something that will work in my classroom where I'm focusing on the humans in front of me? Is this something that I could easily put into practice? So this focus on connection is why I created a free device-free digital citizenship lesson, just space for kids to talk about how we treat each other without screens involved. So as March picks up speed, remember that your presence, your personal connection matters more than perfection. Trust your instincts, lead with connection, and let one meaningful moment be enough. That's the important part. connection is not a distraction from learning. It's what makes learning possible. Until next time. Oh, let me tell you where the freebie is first. It's Trina Debery, teachingandlearning.com/digital-citizenship. Digital-citizenship. I'm also going to drop it in the show notes so you will see it there as well, but I do want to tell you where that was. Okay, next week we're going to continue this conversation about, focusing on being present, focusing on being there in the moment, making connections with kids, forgetting that we don't have to be perfect and that it's the humanness that is what makes us so vital. Until next time, sweet dreams and sleep tight.